Hey, this is Brent.
Hey, this is Jordan.
What's up? This is Matt.
Hey, this is Sean.
And this is the Digital Ascent Podcast. All right, what is up, everybody? We are here tonight with myself, Brent. We've got Jordan, we have Matt, we have Sean, and we have a few current events to go over tonight. Kind of all over the place on these. This is just things you may see headlines for, but of course, we find them interesting and we like to discuss these things on these podcasts. That's what we do. So the first one is kind of an odd one because you'd think Sony would have their stuff together. But the first one we have on the list here is using your PS5, so your PlayStation 5 vertically, may result in hardware failure. And we're going to discuss this here a little bit. We're going to bounce this around just to kind of get people's viewpoints and opinions on how is this even a thing sort of deal. But apparently, just for those who don't know, the fact that you're using it vertically, of course, the motherboard is sideways in the system. And as that system heats up over time, the liquid metal that is essentially between the heatsink and the CPU or the system on a chip on the device, over time, gravity's just making that liquid metal just kind of essentially, I say drip. It doesn't get, like, it's not pure liquid, but it is over time heating up enough to where it is drooping down the motherboard. So me personally, I don't understand how Sony didn't kind of think about this and
let me tell
foresee this as
y'all
an issue. All right, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead,
look, and I don't know how productive this will be to the conversation. I just want to voice how this is an expensive console, all right? And I really, when I think about my PlayStation, I'm immediately met with anxiety, all right? And I'm going to tell you why. It has to be placed in a very specific area, very specific way, all right? And their stupid plastic stand that comes with the console, all right, is exactly that. It's a stupid plastic stand. The point that I'm making here is that I feel like they already didn't give you a lot of options to be successful with putting this console safe places where it's not going to be at risk of falling over or tipping over. And I mean, that problem is multiplied in and of itself by the stupid plastic stand they've got. And now, like, it's being expressed that, like, to me, one of the safer ways to mount the console is vertically. I don't have that ability because of my small living space, but I don't even have the choice now, right? Because it's like, oh, there's this new potential risk. Your console may be bricked if if you're using it the way that you're supposed to. You know what I'm saying? And I really don't know what I was meaning to say. You know what I mean by interrupting here or jamming in to the conversation. I don't understand it, man. This is these aren't cheap.
So here's my problem. Like, you're going to spend all this money, and you've been putting out consoles for a long time now. Long time. I remember PS2, I could throw that thing against the wall, and it would still work. So, like, where did we go that now, okay, it's going to, like, we didn't test this. We didn't push the higher limits of the temperature and whether or not this stuff's going to melt and go. Like, what? This kind of
Fix
stuff.
it, Sony. Fix it.
Like,
I
where's
tend
the
to think
quality
of
testing here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I do not own a PlayStation, but I thought these things were basically explicitly intended to be, sat up vertically.
Premium.
I feel like I thought that's what they looked for, man. I thought that they were supposed to sit up vertically and look like, like a trendy piece of art or something like that.
Aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, exactly. And now you're telling me that if I put it in what I personally thought was the only acceptable aesthetic way, that it's that the metal inside
you don't have a lot of options.
Metal's gonna melt.
You know what I mean?
It's just
Damned
drip,
if you do,
drip,
damned
drip.
if you don't.
Man, like what? I'm
It
kind
is
of on
crazy.
the. I'm kind of as far as to know, this isn't like super verified. I haven't seen Sony come out, and maybe I just missed it. I haven't seen Sony come out and say, "Yep, we know it's a problem." But I'm kind of on the if it is. I mean, Sony, you got to make this right, homie. This is an expensive freaking console, and it has one job, and that is to run video games. And if you can't run the video games because it's overheating and therefore having performance issues, I mean,
I'd be interested to know here quickly before we, kind of move on to this next topic, but I'd be interested to know how widespread the issue is. I wonder if this is like a manufacturing fault or like, not that, I mean, Sony is like a leading, competitor as far as, video games are concerned, the leading, competitor. But I would be interested to know, like, if it is a legitimate fault and this isn't like a user error type thing, are they going to have to recall a bunch of consoles and pay for these repairs out of pocket, or what happens there? That's a lot of do-gooding for one company.
They're gonna good luck, have fun.
It is worth like throwing out there. I mean, it is plausible to put these consoles in like scenarios where they can't breathe, right? Where they can't intake cool. When I say breathe, I mean specifically intake cool air. And I mean, to be fair, if you just stick it in like an enclosed box the same way that you would have like a VCR, ooh, look at me dating myself. And then, I mean, I guess I would say that you can expect something like this is more likely to happen. So,
there's not a lot of overhead with this new generation. That's really what it comes down to. There's not the overhead that there used to be where the chip is running at X degrees and it can get 40 degrees hotter without it damaging anything. These things are already running at the tippity top, and they have like a very small degree of variance before you're going to start to have problems, just because they're sandwiching all these components down into this one small system now. It looks like, looking at the article real quick, as far as like who's reporting this, it's a lot of your kind of third-party repair businesses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're essentially showing pictures of like, hey, this is what happens when you run it vertically. And you can literally see where the liquid metal has moved down on the chip from it being ran like that. And I would also make the assumption that this is people that are literally playing the hell out of this thing in probably extreme situations too. Probably the house is a little bit hotter than what Sony would have tested. You know what I mean? It could be a very hot environment. Like you said, it could be enclosed. It's not properly ventilated. They've got it on all the time. Maybe they're playing more demanding titles.
I just don't understand why you can't have quality testing in these type of variances of situation, right? Because you would expect them to go, oh, this is not going to be in the optimized temperature in this specific setting with all the ventilation in the world. Like, you would assume it's going to be sitting in a variety of situations. So I'm just not sure why they wouldn't quality test it this way. You know what I mean? It's just weird to me.
I mean, they're not the only ones, because that brings us to our next topic, and that's AMD with one of their newer cards, the 7900 XTX. Apparently it's overheating now that it's out and about and out in the wild. Certain SKUs, certain boards are overheating, and the tests are showing that it's the vapor chamber. So there's some type of manufacturer, right? There's some type of manufacturer defect. Now, I will say, reading into the article again, when I first looked at the article and it was sent to me, nothing had been said by AMD. They updated it recently, and it says now that AMD is owning up to it, and they claim it's a small subset of cards, and they're going to make it right. But it kind of comes down to what we were just discussing with the PlayStation 5. It's like, how do they not see this? How do they not test this? Especially when I feel like lead time on this sort of stuff has been a lot higher recently, just because, they're sourcing parts. It's taken a while for them to get parts now anyways. And they're not, I don't feel like they're rushing things out the door like they were pre-COVID. Maybe they are. Maybe it's like the whole catch-up mentality now, and they're like, oh, we have to get this out the door immediately because, we didn't reach goals last quarter or whatever. But I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Like, now that's spreading over to a company that doesn't need the bad rep. We should be doing everything we can to prop AMD up for success. We need competition in the GPU market to compete with NVIDIA. And so I hate to see when AMD messes it up.
I do want to say this is explicitly for horizontally mounted cards, which is definitely the default way to mount these cards, for the record. So I think vertically mounted ones had this issue, unlike the PlayStation, where it's like, you could put it up this way or that way. These cards are overwhelmingly mounted in a horizontal position, and there's a lot of questions in my mind as to what happened here and how the QA missed that missed this situation.
When it comes to QA, I'm wondering if, it's one of those things where they can run tests until the cows come home. You know what I mean? But I think and the same thing rings true for PlayStation, right? However, once they get all of the consoles, it's like it's game day, they're shipping those out, whether it's, the consoles or the graphics cards themselves. It's like, these things are flying off the shelves, right? They're in millions of people's, hands. They now essentially, I don't want to say can rely on, but they get like a second, third, fourth, fifth wave of QA in that of their consumers. So maybe it's not that they didn't test thoroughly enough. Maybe it's just that they didn't have the hands necessary. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, so that we're not like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't sound like we're just bashing, but I'm wondering if I've heard that apply to, game dev QA. Now, I know that this is not all in the same mix there, but maybe it's just one of those issues where they just didn't have the hands to catch it. You know what I mean? Before they threw. I don't know if even that's a viable excuse.
I don't think it's a viable excuse, because you're not talking about somebody physically interacting with, like, say, a game where you have to run it and put it through a certain series of tests where somebody is testing. Like, you can machine test these. You can put them all in a line and go, all right, run them. And then they just go, and you put them under extreme load. Like, you don't necessarily need the hands. You just have the output. So it's like, I'm not sure that's a viable excuse, in my opinion. Like, if you're going to put out a card, like Brent said, you are now the competition. You can't really have this tolerance for failure. Like, it should be pristine if you want to get that confidence of consumer buy-in. So for me, I'm kind of like, dude, I expect you to test this to Kingdom Come, and like, I shouldn't be seeing these kind of problems personally.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't look like it's an issue. Right. It doesn't look like it's an issue with the actual design per se. It does look like it's one-off batches of cards, apparently. They're thinking that it has either something to do with the volume of liquid inside the chamber itself, or the pressure's incorrect on specific cards. So something with the cooling solution itself, the heat sink in the vapor chamber, is off on a limited batch of cards, is what it looks like. So anyways. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next subject here, which is a good one. All of our favorite new piece of tech, if you will, ChatGPT, is apparently being added to Bing, and that is the Microsoft Bing, and that is the search engine that I'm sure everybody that's listening right now absolutely loves and uses daily. That's a joke, by the way. By March 2023, so March of this year, they plan on adding ChatGPT to that search engine. For anybody that doesn't know, apparently Microsoft is one of the biggest investors in the technology. So that's an interesting little tidbit.
I did not know that. That is insane to me.
Yeah, they're one of the biggest investors in OpenAI, and I've seen reports of them saying by March and by the end of March. I'll tell you what, regardless, I think that it really, for the first time in a long time, Google had, like, if that happens, Google's going to have like a challenge to address. And like, their Google Assistant is cool, and it would be cool if that was part of Google when you go to the search engine. But I mean, ChatGPT is just better. I can't ask Google Assistant to write me PowerShell code to dump AD users, or Python to connect to network devices, or have it write me, whatever type of stuff I want to be written. And I think it's interesting. I mean, gosh, how long has it been since Google's been basically king and took over from like Ask Jeeves to Alta Vista and Yahoo.com? And for the first time in a while, I mean, this is a major market shakeup, at least in my opinion, assuming it comes to fruition. And I am like, have that kind of like excited, anxious, feeling going on about what does this mean for the future? Do I replace my Google search on my phone with Bing? Do I get rid of is Bing my default search engine now? What?
Yo, it looks like this is like they're serious about moving like quick. There is and we'll have these linked in the show notes, but Microsoft already has like a landing page. They're also going to integrate DALL-E 2 into like the image search.
I saw that.
And that already has a landing page of like they've got a video of what that's going to look like and or what the intended, final product is supposed to look like. But yeah, it says its image creation is coming soon to your region, and it's got a nice little like video with a whole bunch of like they're moving quick. That is this is pretty insane. This like I feel like this just broke right like a couple days ago. This news just dropped a couple days ago, and there's a landing page already.
I just like just more food for thought about this. There's also a Chat GPT 4. Now, just to catch everybody up, I'll try to make this super fast. There was Chat GPT 3, or maybe, I'm sorry, it's just called GPT 3. I apologize. Called GPT 3. And then there was Chat GPT, which is like the user-friendly version of GPT. And then there's now GPT 4, which is, from what I understand, supposed to blow GPT 3 and Chat GPT out of the water. And I personally have no idea what that looks like because I'm so amazed by Chat GPT.
Well, we were already blown out of the water by this.
Yeah, exactly. What does that mean? I'm going to get blown. Like, what does that mean that GPT-4 blows GPT-3 out of, or Chat GPT-3 out of, gosh, it is so hard to keep all these straight. Whatever. The point is,
there's a lot of technologies. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And the naming's all very similar. So the point is, like, how does GPT-4 blow GPT-3 and Chat GPT out of the water? How does that get integrated with Bing? And more importantly, what does that mean for humans? And I'm sorry, I do not like want to open up this full can of worms. I would like to hear, those of you that are listening to this episode, please come to our Discord and tell us what you think about that stuff. I would love to have some more dialogue about that because I'm,
oh yeah, we're going to be talking about GPT and AI a lot here in the coming year for sure.
Not
Sean,
this
any
episode.
thoughts?
Yeah.
I'm happy about the competition with Google. Mostly because there's not really been anything strong enough to compete with it. So I am really curious, like Matt, about how this kind of shakes up that space. I'm also curious to see what it kind of looks like as far as having it integrated into your search engine. Like, is it a toggleable feature? Like, is it something that will always be on? Is it something you could, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just curious about the implementation as a whole because I don't know. But I'm curious. I'm also terrified. I mean, I'm not going to change that stance from the last episode. Right. It still scares me about what it's gonna learn as far as now you have access to the full internet and now you have all these searches and information pumping through it. It's like, when are we going to start turning Ender's Game and all of a sudden the AI becomes cognizant and starts forming its own identity and you're like, because I mean,
good reference.
We'll see.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm curious what the year brings for just AI in general. But
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to the next one, and this is our last current event, kind of an odd one. This just popped up recently. Apparently, the Pixel 7 is the latest smartphone because this is not the first smartphone for it to happen to, but it has a spontaneously shattering camera. By that, it's talking about the glass on the back. Something I learned today researching this topic is that Corning, who does a lot of the glass, so Corning Gorilla Glass, Corning in general, they have all sorts of iterations of glass. They apparently layer this glass, and one of those layers has tension put on it purposely, and it's to resist scratching. That's the whole point of it. It binds it up in a way on a molecular level that makes it more resistant to scratching. Apparently, if that sandwiching of layers and that formula is anywhere off, it will just shatter randomly. Pop. And apparently that's what's happening with a batch of Pixel 7s. I'm trying to think of the other phones that this happened on back in the day. It wasn't that long ago. I say back in the day. I think it was the Galaxy S20 had the problem. And I want to say even at one point iPhones had it, but I could be wrong. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Oh, big surprise. More hardware issues from Android.
Hey, look, hold on, wait. All right,
I'm sorry. I'm salty. I've had some issues over the years. I'm salty.
All right, so on a real personal level, just real quick, my wife and I have Pixel 7s. My wife's rocking the Pixel 7. I've got the 7 Pro, and so when I heard this broke, I'm like walking in fear. You know what I mean? Like, am I gonna wake up and my camera panel's gonna be gone or broken? Like, I don't know if you guys have ever had to, and any of our listeners as well, if you guys have ever had to go and like get some of these phones in the last 5 to 8 years, like repaired. Dude, these things aren't cheap, especially when the weird wonky glass breaks. If there are any kind of curves or it's a special whatever, oh my God, it is ridiculous. All right, so that's one thing that I wish. I love this phone. I don't really have a lot of complaints about it. And I'll tell you what, if I wake up and my camera panel's broken, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But this doesn't make me happy. I'm a not happy guy with today's news, just across the board.
Again, it just goes back to quality testing. Like,
Right.
you know, I mean, I get it that variances happen, and you know, I'm not a manufacturer, right? Like, there's got to be a margin of error here. But again, it's like, I'd be curious, how do we know how widespread it is? Because I don't remember seeing that in the research. It was just like a statement that this could happen and has happened to people. So, you know, it's like, okay, you know, Jordy might go the entirety of the phone's lifetime and that never happened, right? So
this is one of those source from social media things. This is a combination of Reddit, the Google support forums, Twitter. Yeah. There's even a hashtag for it, Pixel 7 broken camera on Twitter. So there's enough people to kind of join in and say it. And here's the thing. I think quality testing in general, quality assurance, whatever you want to call it these days, I think there's obviously companies are still doing it. They have to some extent, right? But I don't think it's as in depth. And I think over the years, as our technology's become more advanced, there's been another layer of variables added to it that I don't think they've necessarily accounted for, because they're even in the article they're talking about, they're thinking that it could be extreme temperature variances in terms of like, especially heck, the weather here locally. I mean, it's 20 degrees one day and it's 65 the next day. And, you know, they're saying that people who, you know, might have the devices on them and they work outside, they're getting super cold, they get inside to the heat, and so on and so forth. Like that variance over and over again, over and over, over and over. And then eventually it just gives up the ghost. It just snaps. So there's no telling. We'll probably see more about that, something more official. I'm sure Google's going to have some type of official statement on that at some point, and
hey, you know,
start to see what action is going to be taken.
Also, just in closing, I don't want to be that guy, all right? But there are, just in regards to Brent's comment about, you know, the weather and these changes and constantly, you know, the device kind of constantly switching back and forth and going through them. You know, it's hot in a lot of places that it's not normally hot, and it's a lot colder in places where it's not normally that cold. You know what I mean? So it's like maybe, you know what? I'm not even going to chase this rabbit down the hole. It's not worth it. Just throw it out there. You know, weather's been kind of crazy the last couple of years.
I sense like a global warming comment coming up.
There's a joke in there somewhere, dude. I just couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. And I appreciate the assist, Brent. I'm gonna go ahead and simmer down now and let you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Hey,
so I did want to point out really quick.
Okay, go ahead.
I did. It was the Galaxy S7 and the Galaxy S20. So
gotcha. Okay.
The 2016 and 2021. It looks like I just did it.
Yeah. So we're not talking about small companies. We're not talking about like the kind of more obscure, off the wall brands of Android phones here. We're talking big players in the market. Google and Samsung. They probably hold the most share in that market on the Android side, which ironically ties us into the main topic for the night. And I do want to comment here, just a little side note. All the talking points, or a majority of the talking points anyways, were generated by ChatGPT for this podcast. So everything we're hitting tonight, it was essentially a summarization by that technology, just in case you guys weren't convinced how powerful this platform is. Anyways, so yes, the age-old debate, talking about Android versus iOS specifically. I did say iOS in terms of the topic because technically it is that, but iOS is essentially iPhone, because in terms of a mobile communications device, or a cell phone as we would refer to it as, if it's iPhone, it's going to be running iOS. So that's the reason, you know, it's kind of one and the same. It's a little bit synonymous in this conversation. On the Android side, it's not, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. That's kind of one of the talking points, but multiple manufacturers make Android devices. Only one manufacturer, that is Apple, makes iOS devices. So anyways, we're gonna jump straight into it. This is gonna be a very kind of debate heavy, discussion heavy main topic. We are going to jump into the pros of Android first, but I did want to start off and ask, and I already know the answer to this question, but for our listeners, I do want everybody to kind of comment on what their daily driver is. My daily driver personally is an iPhone. It's an iPhone 12, so it's not even it's 3 years old now, and it's still trucking and kicking along just fine, runs everything I need. Jordan, what are you running? You already mentioned it here, but go ahead and read it.
I sure did.
State.
Yeah, I'm running a Pixel 7 Pro. Android.
Okay, Matt, how about you?
I am a recent iPhone convert within the past year, and I am running a 13 mini.
There you go. Okay. And that's good. That the recent convert comment's going to come into play here a lot with this discussion. I already know, but which is good. Sean, what are you running?
So I have the Galaxy S22 Ultra. Just picked it up a month or so ago.
That's right. I remember when you upgraded that. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's jump in now that everybody knows. So we're split right down the middle, 50-50. We we got two iPhone users, one a recent convert, that being Matt, and then we've got two. You guys have used Androids pretty much exclusively, right, Jordan and Sean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, long time user.
There was a stint for a couple years where I was running iPhone, but I was within the last 10 years, so a ways away. But I did rock. Okay. I did rock iPhone for a tiny bit. Yeah.
I'm sure you've long forgotten a lot about iPhones. So.
You know what? I'm interested to get into it. You know what I mean? I don't want to hijack here right at the front, but I'm interested to get into it and kind of see where everybody, more so Sean, being a longtime Android runner himself. I'm just excited to get into it. Just a little time.
Okay. Well, so let's do it then. And I'm going to hit you first, Jordan, but let me go ahead and point out what the first pro. This is known. Everybody knows that this is a pro of Android. The customization factor. And that really comes down to the look and the feel of the device in terms of like how the operating system functions. Also the ability to install third-party apps. We're going to get more into that on the Apple side of it, but that essentially means it could be things or programs, pieces of software that are not readily available on the Google Play Store can technically be side-loaded onto the device. So there's that level of customization too. So we're talking about two things. We're talking about look and feel, and we're talking about being able to put essentially homebrew apps on the device. Jordan, what's your stance on that?
Real quick, I just want to take a moment and define side-loaded.
Yeah, Go ahead. That's fine.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. And side loading is just when you install an application like directly from like an operating system or like for like the file application, the operating system. You would go to like a website, download it, and then run it and then run the installer from your downloads folder. Basically,
yeah. Side loading is it just means that you're downloading an app from a place that's not your specific operating
Jordan,
Play Store.
When was the last time you side-loaded an app, Jordan?
Dude, like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And
what was it?
Actually,
if you don't mind me asking.
It was like a video editor. One of my qualms, and I won't spend too much time on this, but like I've been rocking with Samsung for a really long time, and I've kind of bounced back between Pixels and the Samsung phones and stuff like that. And I love like the built-in video editor that comes with, Samsung phones. It's awesome. You can do a lot with it and it's great. And then you switch over to the Pixel side and you don't really have the editor, and Photos sucks, and Google Photos, it just really sucks. So I was looking for another video editor and was hoping that I'd be able to find, an APK or like an app download, for Samsung's video editor somewhere. Couldn't find it. Or no, I'm sorry, I did find it, but it was, I don't know how to really get specific about it, but like Samsung doesn't allow you to run Samsung software on non-Samsung phones. Right. So I got it downloaded, but it didn't work. So, but totally okay. I was able to find, another, couple different apps and run through them and test them. All of those sucked too. So, but anyways, to answer the question, yeah, I sideloaded something a minute ago, or not too long ago, and it's a feature I use kind of often, I think. Just kind of out of the blue. Yeah, super helpful to not be locked in.
What about the look and the feel? How often do you actually go through and change the icons and the theme and things of that nature?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not. I'll change like wallpapers and like you can change the general like OS theme and stuff like that. Much very similar to how you would like the taskbar theme on like Windows or something like that.
So nothing too crazy.
Nothing too crazy, and part of that is because I think the icons, like the alternate ones that are available, are just really crappy. They suck, and I mean it's great. There's a lot of options, but the top tier ones, and Sean's gonna disagree, all right. But the top tier ones, I just don't feel like are they're not what I'm looking for. I think iPhone takes the cake on like general default app like icons and the art theme or whatever you want to call it of just I don't know. I can't, so I tend not to change the icons for that reason. I hate the way they look, the alternate ones.
I got it.
Yeah.
Sean, what about you? You wholly disagreed with the whole icon customization comment. So
dude,
go ahead, fill us in.
I'm almost constantly changing either the launcher, the icons. I mean, like there's so much you can do there that I love it. Like at one point, some people may know what this is, but it's an anime called Sword Art Online, and there's a drop down that they use in the show, and you could literally turn your Android into that drop down and just install the launcher, and it made like the noise, it made all the visuals change, how you access it, like everything was changed. And that was a while ago, but like I've changed launchers, like icons. I've done minimalist views where it only shows me the text, there's no icons. I love playing with how it looks and feels and the sounds. Like I've loaded custom sounds in for things, like alerts or notifications. It's just, for me, that's one of the selling points of Android is that if I'm feeling a special way for a week, I can just change how my phone operates. And then when I'm done, I just rip it back out and I'm done. Like it's
gotcha,
quick and easy.
I understand that. I used to do the same. I mean, I've had plenty of Android phones in the past, and I did similar things. I tinkered a lot with them until I just didn't want to anymore. Matt, do you have any comments on that? Just because you, I mean, I know you're a recent convert. Were you big on the customization side when it came to Android?
For a long time, I was. I would say 8 years ago, I was throwing ROMs on there, which is like a custom operating system, with like additional features created by the community and hopefully without malware or spyware. Good luck. And, I was changing icons as I kind of, grew older. I stopped doing that primarily for security reasons. And I started just like using the baked OS. That the OS matured, the normal OS matured and it got better. I didn't feel like I needed the extra bells and whistles, coupled with the security and stability issues. And by the end of it, I wasn't changing the icons anymore. It's too much hassle. They never looked uniform. And that always kind of bothered me, because the custom icon packs just wouldn't get every single icon. And so some of them would look really cool. And then,
you'd always have like, you'd have like 5 apps that had no art for them whatsoever. And they looked horrible just in contrast. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't work for me. I like uniform things, and
I'm the same way.
At least in this case, I do, not always. And so, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it. I've got negative things to say about some of the customization stuff. The side loading, as like somebody who's a security professional, the side loading stuff is concerning to me. The ability to load pirate software is concerning to me. The ability to root being easier than the ability to jailbreak, which I file under customization, is concerning to me. But if you're into customization, I do strongly agree that like there is no competition between Apple and Android. Android wins, and Apple didn't leave the starting line, in my personal opinion.
So let's use that as a jumping off point then, because one of the pros that we have on the list here for iOS or iPhone is how user-friendly the interface is. It's simple, it's intuitive, it makes it easy for anybody to operate it, navigate it, perform common tasks. They're obviously that's a pro for a lot of people. A lot of people, including myself these days, not because I don't like a more complex system, but when I pick up my phone and I want to do something with my phone, I don't want there to be extra steps in the middle. I want to get to what I'm looking for, as quickly as possible, and I want to get it done and put my phone back down on my desk stand, in my pocket, on the dash, whatever, wherever I'm at. I just want to get it done, and I want it to be done in as few of clicks or taps, if you will, as possible. So, any comments on that from you guys? Matt, let's start with you, Matt, again, just because you're running an iPhone as a daily driver, in contrast to your Android, which I know you're a heavy phone user. I am, big time, more than I am. So what do you think about that? What's been your experience moving over?
I find the UI, or the user interface of the iPhone, to be really consistent between apps. And that's both a pro and a con. The pro of it is that everything looks and feels the same and moves at the same pace. The cons being that it reduces flexibility, and that's kind of unfortunate. But it just kind of is what it is. There, it's the price that you pay for kind of like a friendlier user interface, a more consistent user interface. Is that you just don't get developers who can go wild and do their own thing. I personally, which UI do I like better? Whatever, I don't care. Both UIs are fine, right? I guess once again, it's kind of like how much you want to customize it, and once again, the Android's amazing at customizing, but and the iPhone isn't. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with the iPhone UI, though. I mean, I feel like it's good for what it is, and I feel like it makes sense for a lot of people, and I guess that's all there is to it for me. Okay. I guess I don't really have any preference if I'm not digging deep into the customization stuff.
Right. Jordan, Sean, you guys have any comments on that? I mean, I know you guys don't daily drive it, so it's going to be hard for you to speak to it, though I'm sure you guys probably at some point more recently have potentially troubleshot it, maybe for a family member or a friend.
Oh yeah. I just had a conversation with my dad about it like a few days ago, as far as like helping him with some things, or like suggesting potential, I don't know, we can get into it in a minute, but I definitely, again, pros and cons for me, I would say more con heavy, but again, it's so subjective. It's hard to make an assertion when it really comes down to personal preference. So
right, I mean, it's like a car. I mean, not everybody's going to like the same type of car.
Yep.
They're all doing the same thing. They're getting us from point A to point B. You can essentially say the same thing about a mobile communications device like a phone. It's making a phone call. It's sending a text. It's accessing social media. It's just doing so differently. So it's all about preference. Jordan, any comments on the iPhone side before we move on to the next Pro for Android?
I just quickly was going to say that I've contemplated recently in the last year, actually just before our last phone upgrade, of like, man, I don't know if we're going to stay on the Android side or switch over to iPhones. And there are some other contributing factors to that. But one of them was there is an appeal for me of like the simplicity of an iPhone's layout. Like the UI stuff, like the top down, kind of notification drawer that you guys have. And then if I'm not mistaken, there's one at the bottom as well, right? And
that's right.
So you kind of have like two that are split for different use cases or whatever. And I think that's really appealing. I really like that. So I just wanted to take a second to call it out, because I don't know if I'm going to trash iPhone some more.
I got you.
Hey, just try to take the opportunity where I got it,
No, that's fine. That's fine. This is all open discussion here, open debate. Everybody has their own choice here. So, which kind of comes, and this speaks into the next Pro for Android, is the hardware options. So, of course, on the Apple side, the iOS side, you have iPhones. You have different series of iPhones, and that's purely to the generation of it. So, like to where I have a 12, that's 2 or 3 years old now. Matt's got the 13 mini, that's just a couple of years old, or like 1 year old at this point. It's really about generation leaps for them. And then of course they have, in some generations, they have the minis, which are a little bit smaller. Some have the pluses, which are bigger. And then they also have the pros, which are super big and usually have like another camera apparatus and a lot more horsepower under the hood, that sort of thing. That's about it on the iPhone side. And keep in mind here, all of those are made by Apple. I do want to specify for people that don't know, only Apple is making those devices. On the Android side, of course, you've got a bunch of manufacturers, some large, some small. We already spoke to two of them. Google, of course, which is the they're kind of the first party vanilla. And by vanilla, I mean like that's just like your baseline as clean as it gets sort of iteration of an Android phone, mainly because they're the ones behind maintaining and developing the Android code that's behind it, the Android OS. And then, of course, you have people that kind of repackage that and put their own flavor on it, like Samsung and, gosh, who else, guys? I mean, who else do we have these days? LG, which did they or did they not get out of the smartphone game? I don't remember.
Oh,
I feel like they did.
You know what, man?
I feel like they got out of the market.
I think you're right. I'm sorry.
I think they pulled out. Yeah, there's not as many as there used to be. I will say that. I think there's oh gosh, what's the other? Well, Motorola's still a player. I do know that they're still making phones.
Aren't they?
Yeah, they're still a player. Gosh, who else?
What about?
I've got a
OnePlus?
I've got a list here.
Okay, go ahead, Jordan.
So we've got Apple, Samsung, Motorola, Google, LG. Some of these are Chinese manufacturers, and I may butcher their names. I think this is Xiaomi.
I'm not familiar with that. Huawei. I know I'm familiar with Huawei. I believe it's how it's pronounced.
Yep. OnePlus, and then Oppo is the other one. Some of these are key players in other parts of North America, and there are like social political reasons of why, the more Chinese key players are not very relevant in North America. But yeah, they're just not. There are other phone makers, you know what I mean?
Right.
But not all of them are massive major players.
And
something from like Xiaomi. Go ahead.
You spoke to one of the pros and one of the cons to this great debate, if you will. Very specifically, you were saying, hey, I used to have a Samsung phone. It had a first-party app that only worked on Samsung Android devices, a video editor, whatever the case may be.
Yes, sir.
I moved over to a Google phone or a Pixel phone, the Pixel 7. I can no longer use that app because that was a first-party Samsung app. So I look at that personally. I look at that as a con because they've kind of all the manufacturers under the Android umbrella have kind of sectioned themselves off as like their own little mini first party devices.
Okay.
Which is kind of unfortunate.
This is why this is and Sean, I hear you over there, but let me just squeeze this out really quick. All right. So this is one of the things for me where it's one of the things that made the Pixel so appealing to me is like, okay, cool. Google makes Android. If I want the purest experience on Android, right, then I'm gonna swap over to Google. You know what I mean? Like the Pixel phones, and I'll get it right from the horse's mouth. You know what I mean? On the Samsung side, man, they've got a whole separate app store that you have to keep track of that you can't get rid of. And some of the way or the only way to update some of the Samsung specific apps that you will definitely be utilizing is to update them through the Samsung app store.
Right.
And so it's like, I don't know, man. It's one of those things where it's like I don't really understand the game launcher argument of like why people don't want to manage multiple games. We don't have to get into that. That's not why I'm mentioning it. But on my side, I understand it on the phone side, right? Of like, man, this is so annoying to have multiple launchers that are both yelling at me to get updates. Samsung doesn't update its OS at the same time as Google's. So we're often waiting, or you're often waiting months. And maybe it's not as bad now, but the point there is that like it's separate. When you're playing with a manufacturer like Samsung, you get two kind of experiences: the Google experience that kind of takes the back seat, and then the Samsung. They have their own version of Android OS. Like it's got its own name and it's got its own release schedule. It's wonky, man. Once you get into the weeds, it's not terrible. But it's just up to user preference of like what you really want to deal with on your own device, running multiple sources for updates and app installs and stuff,
Right. And most people are not even going to get into the weeds, but so much on that. But Sean, I heard some very strong opinions coming from you a little while ago.
Yeah,
what do you got, sir?
So here's the deal, right? Yes, you can. But like I ignore those things and never have any problems. Like it's really more of a choice in how integrated you want to be into that system, in my opinion. Because, I like the ability to go, I like this feature. I can probably find it somewhere and pull it down. Yeah, you might get some variants. Yeah, you might get some but you can find something else that'll do that thing. On the flip side, with iOS, you get what you get, and that's it. Like whatever's in the App Store, that's what you got. And so my dad was having some problems with a calendar app that he really liked, and he has not been able to find anything else on the iOS App Store that is comparable. And so he's kind of like hard locked into this thing. And so I don't know. For me personally, I would rather have the flexibility and I can if I want to, rather than you get what you get. That's
okay. So wait, hold on. We might be jumping around here, but Sean, to your point, I just want to throw out maybe in and of itself that becomes a pro, right? If your dad doesn't have someone like you to call and say, "Hey, Sean DePaul Jr., I need some help here with my iPhone. All right, this one app isn't working. La da 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 da." If he doesn't have you to call and walk him through that and verify that, who's to say? And this has nothing to do with Sean DePaul Sr. specifically. All right, but just our more, the more senior users. What's to say that they don't go on the App Store and download something that is super malicious or not? You know what I mean? Like not safe to have on their phone. And I mean, that's, I feel like one of the pros of having kind of like that sectioned off, micromanaged, kind of offering of apps, whatever you want to call it, on the Apple side, right? Is they're verifying whatever is going to go on their users' devices has been swept and cleaned and verified on their end that this is safe software. I can't tell you how many times a week I'm seeing an article.
At the same time, you are having you're having a limitation. Like if it doesn't have a particular functionality or it doesn't suit your method of operation, you can't find another way to do that in iOS.
That's fair,
you're just
Sean.
Kind of stuck with that limitation.
You know what I'm going to rebuttal with?
I see your point, but I want all the functionality.
You know that sometimes unlimited access is not the godsend we want it to be. I see this. I agree with you because I'm on the Android side. You know what I mean? I'm rocking the phone. It's not likely I'm going to switch anytime soon. I'm just throwing it out there. I like that approach. Is that I know that there's no possible way. Even when I was kind of sideloading the Samsung, app a couple weeks ago, I had that little tinge of like, is this safe to put on my phone? Right. And I ran my malware scanners and stuff. I've got a couple AV scanners on my phone. Run those real quick. All right, cool. I'm gonna take their word for it. All right, but there is no second guessing that. Like Apple knows. All right, well, if we don't want our users to go download third-party apps, let's just make sure that they have everything that our users would want, and they'll have great data on that because they're the only manufacturers of their devices. So I agree with where you're coming from. I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate here. All right, with
this sounded more like a 3-on-1. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm feeling a little betrayed here.
All right, let me catch up our pros and cons list because we have jumped around quite a bit, and I want to fortify some of the things we've already talked about, just to kind of catch us up and get us back on track a little bit. And I know Matt's got a lot more to say too, so I want to give him an opportunity here. But something that we didn't talk about for the whole hardware options point is that, of course, on the Android side, there is a lot of options when it comes to hardware. And by that, I mean, there's a lot of different budget options on the Android side that just simply don't exist on the iPhone side, unless you're buying essentially kind of like gray market or secondhand phones. Like the borderline, like the cheapest iPhone you can get is usually like, probably around in the $400, $500 range for like an SE. When it comes to an Android phone, I can walk to the store right now and pay like $50 and I can walk out with an Android phone. Is it going to be great? Absolutely not. It's not going to be the best thing in the world. It'll make phone calls and it'll send and receive texts, but I'm not going to have a really great time doing anything else with it. But yes, I can walk over there and I can get a really cheap phone on the Android side. It's not going to happen on the iPhone side or on the Apple side. And then you guys also, you kind of hit on the whole security thing, which ironically in the list that we've got here, the security is a con on the Android side. And I will say it's gotten better. We can discuss that a little bit. But on the security side, because of the strong restrictions that Apple puts on the App Store, and because of kind of the they kind of treat it like a closed off sandbox a little bit. The system, nothing gets out that's not supposed to get out, and nothing's allowed to get in that's not supposed to get in. Sort of mentality. They've been a lot more, I don't know, adamant about making that a thing over the years, more so than Google, where Google has kind of focused on like we want our users to have more customization. So, like Jordan, I know when you went and sideloaded that app or you installed that third party app. From somewhere other than the App Store, you had to specifically go into the settings. If I remember correctly, it's kind of like in the debugging side, and you had to turn off that wall. You had to get rid of that wall blocking you from third-party apps.
Absolutely. And then even after that, there's a second kind of, I don't know that you can get rid of it, but there's a second kind of warning of, hey, you're downloading an application from a source that is not a normal one. Are you sure?
Right, not signed, not verified, all these good things.
Yeah, it's not verified. Here's the risks,
action.
XYZ. Yes, sir.
Right. It's very intentional, very, very intentional. So there's your security side. On the Google's or on the Apple side with the iPhone, your common user is not going to have any clue how to jailbreak something. And with each release of iOS, it gets harder and harder to jailbreak anyway. So like, for the average tinkerer, if you want to tinker with a mobile device, you're likely going to be going to the Android side. And we also hit on another pro and potentially con, depending on how you look at it, because you guys were talking about app selection. Sean was using his dad as an example there with the calendar app. One of the pros listed here for iOS is that typically there's a larger selection of high quality apps. And I want that to be the distinction there. And that, and this has been my experience too. So I just want to go ahead and wrap my opinion up into the statement is that I also have noticed that like while Google Play Store has more, they have less high quality options. And what's worse about it is that a lot of times you'll pick, the ones at the top. You might download and try one at the top, and oftentimes it's potentially one of the worst choices on the store, just because it's been long abandoned or. They haven't touched it in years or whatever, at least on the flip side of that.
Brent really going in right now.
No, I mean, on the flip side of that, for me, like on Apple, if I jump into the App Store, I search for something. Let's say I search for, I don't know, a game. And generally, the top few listings are going to be the best offering that the store has. And the reviews are absolutely legitimate. They're not padded. They're not, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. It's more of a, I'm not spending a lot of time finding an app that works for me because they've already done it for me. They've already have validated that like, hey, these guys are actually developing good stuff. That's the reason they're here in the first place. And to further fortify that, just before we move on and I pass it off to whomever else wants to speak on it, it's a lot more costly for a developer to get into the Apple ecosystem than it is on the Android side. I think the Android SDK is still free. On the Apple side, it is not. You have to pay for it. And then you have to jump through essentially burning rings of fire to get your app in the App Store in Apple.
Hey, Brent, really quick, can you define SDK?
It's a software development kit. So that's essentially a developer is going to download that and they have all the tools, all the dependencies, what have you, to develop an app on that platform. So Apple charges for theirs. I also think, if I remember correctly, unless they've changed this in recent years, I think you have to have a Mac device to develop it. I don't think you can do it on Windows. I could be wrong. They may have changed that in recent years just because, well, it probably suits them better to be more compatible and have, open up their demographic of devs. But like I said, on the Android side, I can go to their website right now. I can sign up for a dev account and I can download the SDK, no problem. And I can be developing an app today and a lot less hoops to jump through. So just a little bit of food for thought there. Anybody have any comments on my last 5 minutes of ranting?
I got comments. Big surprise.
Go ahead, sir.
I want to circle back to hardware for just a moment because I didn't get to say my piece on it. The first thing is that I want to say that I've run Galaxy S3, Google Pixel 2, and Google Pixel 4. I've experienced hardware issues with I think every single one of my Pixel phones at some point in time, and I think my wife and I ran through between us, we ran through 5 Google Pixel ones with 3 of them being replaced by the manufacturer due to manufacturer defects. So I've had some quality issues there in the past several iterations. As part of what drove me to iPhone. Also, the length of time you can expect to get out of the hardware for a Google phone, or sorry, an Android phone is less. I fully expect to be able to run this iPhone 13 mini until they release another mini. And just so everyone knows, the last mini was released like 5 years ago. So it may be a bit, but right. I think I'll be able to run this phone for 5 years. I wouldn't even consider running an Android phone for 5 years.
I don't think so. I think you might be counting your chickens before they've hatched, Matt. I think really quickly, what I want to throw out there is I think iPhone is changing the way that they like their phone offerings. Sure. And so what I think they're going to do is very similar to what, Samsung and Google have done, right? Both of those, their flagship offerings normally came with, on the Samsung side, it was a Note phone, and then you had a Ultra, and then a Plus, and then whatever the normal, standard version of the phone was, right? And in that order, respectively, they went from largest device to smallest device. Now, what we've kind of seen across the market is that they're collapsing those into each other. So instead of doing 3 or 4 phones, maybe you'll have 3, and you'll have your super ultra device. You'll have a slightly larger device and then a small device. And some of the big players have now just collapsed into 2.
Yeah.
And now they're just doing an XL and then a small size device. So what I think iPhone might be doing is exactly the same. They might kind of collapse their XL version. I don't know what their phone offerings are like at the current moment. Are they still launching like 3 or 4 at a time? Anyways, I think that might be a constant. Yeah, well, and just kind of maybe stagger them out throughout so, hey, you might be upgrading in a year or two, right?
Let me put it this way. There was no 14 mini. I would have considered it, but there was no 14 mini. And
fair.
I strongly appreciate the small form factor. The one other thing I want to harp on from the hardware side is the issues with security patch fragmentation. You cannot apply a Google Pixel security patch to a Samsung 22 Ultra. It just doesn't work. And so what happens is Google develops security patches, and then they hand them to Motorola and Huawei and OnePlus and Samsung, and then they all develop their security patches at their own pace, which can be and I say it's no seriousness, it can take 6 months for that security patch to hit the Samsung side and be ready for release. So very disappointing there. Apple doesn't have that problem. You got an iPhone 7 today, you get a security patch on the 1st of the month. Congratulations, or whatever day it is, right? So I have a lot of appreciation there, and I think that there's definitely something to be said about having all of the hardware under a single manufacturer. For sure.
Absolutely. And the software. I mean, because they're typically exactly. they're supporting it for at least, if you buy a device today that like just came out this year, it's this generation, they're supporting it for at least 5 years with software updates. 5 years is a long time in the tech world, guys. Long time.
Yeah, it is.
That means that the new phone that comes out, assuming there's not a hardware limitation preventing it, you are getting all the same software features.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
And it's all the security updates. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. So circling back to the App Store and my opinions there, I personally found that the Android App Store is more likely to have the software that I want. There are software gaps that I have with the iPhone where I just feel like I'm not quite getting exactly what I want out of it. I think that that goes back to that customization stuff where you can just really go hard with the Android side, and on the Apple side, you're just more limited. And so there's definitely some things that I'm not getting out of the Apple side, but my apps are more likely to work like they're supposed to, and that's pretty nice. I like it when my play bar remains in Spotify and I can see what's playing and be able to change the music and such. That seems really important. And that's like one of the issues I was running into on the Android side. That I was like, why am I putting up with this? And
see, I find that so interesting because
Yeah, what phone were you running, Matt? Like,
I was
can you just
running
clear
a
that up
two-
real quick?
Yeah, it was a Pixel 4.
so you
Yeah,
had said that
exactly.
you went through multiple Pixel 1s, right?
Yeah,
I kept my Pixel 1 for 4+ years and never had any problem. The only problem I had was that the battery just eventually started not hacking it after
Damn,
4+
he said,
years
user
of
error,
using it.
Matt.
No. There were some manufacturing problems. I can go dig the news articles up. I don't really want to because it's a long time in the past.
No, I get it. I'm just
manufacturing issues, just like bad batches. And I get it that happens, but I mean, if I buy a flagship phone, I want a freaking flagship experience. Darn it! And if you're not going to give it to me, then I'm going to go buy a flagship phone from somebody else and get a flagship experience.
Well,
And I'll
hold
tell
yeah,
you
but
on.
I
what,
got the
All
flagship experience,
tell you
right?
what,
Like
bro.
I got it.
My-
So
my iPhone Mini is a flagship phone, and I guess it was at the time, right, when I bought it. And yeah, I have what I consider to be an appropriate experience for that.
I just
So,
want to be clear really quickly,
wanna
though.
do?
The Pixels were never meant to. Now, they do kind of hold their own in certain areas with like a Samsung flagship and an iPhone flagship. However, Pixels have always been several $100s cheaper than any of the competing, and like right down to the manufacturing thing of like the first couple iterations of the Pixel phones were made with like plastic and very small amounts of glass. You know, I'm not making excuses. I'm just throwing out there, like, if you bought a $600, Pixel, which would have been on the high end for a Pixel 1 or a Pixel 4, you know what I mean? Like, in comparison to $1,000 phone, your
Are
experiences
you
are
saying
definitely
apples to
going to vary.
oranges here?
I'm saying that fruits can't always be compared.
I got you.
I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just trying. You know what I mean?
check it, Doc. Pixel 4 XL MSRP was $900. The non XL was $800. So these are not cheap phones. The 4A was
That's
close to
fair.
like $600 or $700.
But hardware,
bro,
hardware stacked to hardware,
and in 2019,
they're different flagship phones.
Maybe, I don't know. I think I'm going to go ahead and disagree here and say that the Pixel 4, also came with the Google AI suite, which is the Google AI suite is fantastic for what it is. And it's well beyond what the iPhone can offer. Like far, far beyond. The Google Assistant is beyond Siri. Siri is not even remotely tied in the same way.
That's all. That's fair. I'm
but-
just throwing out there. It's just like with the computer. You know what I mean? You go spend $800 on a computer, and for whatever that gets you, your experience is going to vary in comparison to a $2,000 computer. And I get what you're saying, Matt. I'm just throwing out there that the hardware specifics, and I'm willing. If I was a betting man, I'd be willing to put a lot of money on this. But with the Pixel phones that I've had, in line with other flagship releases for those years, hardware has always been lacking on the Pixel side. So the point that I'm making here is that the appeal behind the Pixel was, to me, in my mind or perspective wise, was always software, the software experience over hardware. Now, I do understand your argument. I'm just expressing that, like, walking into what Pixel very blatantly, I feel like, puts out, and then, kind of dogpile them for it isn't fair.
So are we saying that?
I digress, though.
So
Yeah,
if
right.
you're a power user, are we saying that your experience is going to be directly correlated
Lacking.
to how much money you put in it?
As a power user, holy crap, that was what I was trying to say. Yes, as a power user, Pixel phones are not for power users.
Right, because
I
I'm not
disagree.
talking about someone they just have a phone for a phone function in terms of they're making and receiving phone
Right.
calls, making and receiving texts.
Absolutely.
If you're trying to do more than that, if you're literally doing your day to day on the phone, then you're saying that the direct correlation, or it's going to directly correlate, if I can actually talk at this point, would be how much money you spend on the device, on the hardware.
Well, yeah, because I feel like on my end, and maybe Matt, this will just to corroborate your experience. On my end, my experience with Pixels up until the phone that I have right now, the 7 Pro. All right, I've always had issues with like multitasking or like the software hangups if I'm switching between apps, and it's not frequent. All right, but I'm noticing it enough to remember it. You know what I mean? Like when I'm using the phone or daily driving. And that reason alone was part of the reason of why I would upgrade. Like I'd go from a Pixel phone to a major flagship and then say, man, this is too much phone. And so then I'd go back down and then go back up again because I was kind of over it. So the only time that hasn't happened in this rotation is with the current Pixel phone. So not to say that it's for power users. I may have just slowed down, how I was using my phone day to day, but my point being is that I feel like Matt and I may have experienced some similar hangups, and that's why my perspective is the way it is. Is okay, cool. That's why these phones they tend to be a little bit cheaper than whatever the competing iPhones are, the competing Samsung phones are. It's supposed to be software over hardware, and sometimes the hardware doesn't really stack up. And I feel like I can say that, and just outwardly throw that out there because I mean, iPhone and Samsung, the major key players here in the market, are like almost 10 generations ahead of, like a Pixel phone. So, hey, look, when we're at Pixel 14, then we could have a fair battle. there hasn't been enough iterations. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that argument makes sense. Maybe I'm just making excuses on my end here. I'm just saying it's caught up a little. Maybe I don't know what I'm saying. Now,
I will say, I know Matt has a rebuttal to this, but
yeah,
to Jordan's comments, but I will say that and keep in mind, I did buy my last Android phone was a 6A, which is their more budget oriented iteration of Pixels. But I had a poor experience with core functionality. And by that, I mean, I was having notification issues. Like I was having a delay of notifications that I seemingly could not fix, even with like just like factory resetting my phone or software updates, so on and so forth. And that, to me, that was like, okay, a core part of my phone experience here is broken. I can't handle this. I can't do this. Like I have to get rid of this phone. And so I moved to iPhone because I'm like, I just want something that works. But Matt, go ahead. I know you had kind of more like the price argument in terms of experience versus price.
Yeah, I do not like this argument, unfortunately, Jordy. The first one is that iPhone 11, which I believe released against the Pixel 4, was cheaper than the Pixel 4. And the other argument is that I would also argue that the Pixel experience is more geared towards power users as you get something closer to the base Android experience, as well as you gain access to Google Assistant, which, I mean, man, like it handles phone calls for you. Like that's amazing. It's back to the AI conversation. Where the heck is Samsung handling my phone calls? I mean, it answers spam calls and is like, why are you? And it literally goes, why are you calling this person? Give me your name, and they give me your name, and I'll pass it along. And they act as like it acts as an in between. It can.
That's fair, but that wasn't Google Pixel or the Google AI suite was not. It was not doing that at the Pixel 4. You know what I mean? In the year that launched, those are all new features that have just come to light in the line. And I would agree with you now that my 7 Pro, the spam calling. Well, you know what? We don't got. I'm not going to get caught up on the hangups. But the point that I'm making here is,
5, but like my 4 had that feature. So
okay,
and something to say towards that. I would be willing to bet, because you were saying, at least you thought anyways, and we'd have to like validate the details.
Yeah.
But the iPhone 11 was likely the competing product on the Apple side to the Pixel 4. I'm willing to bet that the iPhone 11 is a more feature-rich and functional device today than the Pixel 4 would be.
Not even question. My Pixel 4 is like, throw it in a garbage can. I know somebody who just got off their 6S because the security updates are done, and they were like, "Oh, I guess it's time for me to go get a 14 because my 6S is no longer getting security updates or 7S
that thing
or
is
whatever
ancient,
it was."
Man. That thing is ancient.
Ancient. We're talking 5-7 years old, and he's like, dude, the guy's in tech. Right. And he's putting up with, like I say, putting up with it.
And it's just worked all this time.
like I can't even conceive running a Pixel 1 right now. I mean, what am I going to use it for? A paperweight? And the thing probably wouldn't even open Gmail. And then
yeah, but the same thing rings true for an iPhone 1. Nobody would be walking around today with an iPhone 1. I think you're being kind of
not to mention
Matt.
that Apple admitted to slowing down their phones.
Hold on.
Yeah, Matt, but the point I'm making is there are iterations that Apple has been allowed that Google just hasn't gotten to yet. And you're comparing generations against generations and like an Android experience.
I'm comparing 7 years ago to 7 years ago.
I mean, but you're also throwing in like stuff from today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just a little, all I'm saying is, all right, there are some holes. There are some holes that I'm just trying to point out.
There are no holes.
This is
you
why.
Want there to be holes, but there ain't no holes here.
This is why it's an age-old debate. This is the reason it's an age-old debate. I don't think this debate is going anywhere anytime soon. We will be talking about this again in 2, 4, 6, 8 years from now, I bet. Because I doubt that either side's going to pull out anytime soon. It's too profitable for both parties. And we're going to see this for a long time to come.
There's going to be a biannual episode every couple of years. We're just going to run it back
kidding.
And we're going to have the same arguments.
Hopefully, at some point, we'll have maybe a third competitor in the ring, another OS that actually competes. I mean,
the Elon Musk phone, of course.
Oh no!
Oh no! That
it'll send you to space.
2 weeks. Shoot.
So with all that information, what sort of closing thoughts do we have here, guys? Because I mean, we've ran it. I think we've covered in some shape or form. We've covered all the pros and cons that we have on the list. They weren't meant to be like ironclad, anyways. They were just meant to be talking points. Are there any other things that you guys want to cover from your experiences with either device, or just any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
I got one.
Okay, good.
Yeah, is that cool? All right.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, man, I guess one thing that I've kind of touched on, but that I think I'd really want to drive home is, from a security perspective, if I was just like given a bottomless budget, I would probably run iPhones for my business. The like standardized security updates, the closed way of the App Store, the fact that it's harder to jailbreak, all of this stuff. I mean, I just feel like it has a better. I think maybe Brent used the word closed ecosystem earlier, and I really like that phrasing. It has a more closed ecosystem. And so, from a security perspective, I personally would recommend, iPhones, I guess the other thought that I would say is if you're going to run an Android and you're concerned about security, I recommend running Pixels because they get the updates. They get them every single month. And that just doesn't happen the same way for the other phones. I do think that there have been some actual improvements, and maybe they are getting there's a security section that's been carved out in the operating system that can actually get monthly security updates. I know I may have said the opposite earlier, but I do believe some of them are still being delayed. And so it's very hard to actionably keep those phones fully, what I would consider to be fully patched. In this case, fully patched means protected against the latest and greatest threats, regardless of what hardware you're running. And it's just not possible the same way on Android. And, I just wanted to throw that out there because I like talking about security, and I feel like this is a reasonable thing to bring up. And I guess that's all mic drop. Yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now.
I like it. Sean, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so my perspective is a little bit different than Matt's, in that the consumer at an average level probably does not care. It's more functionality based. And you mentioned business-wise, yes, I would agree with you from a business standpoint. I know multiple businesses pretty much exclusively run iOS because of that, like you said, closed ecosystem. It's consistent and it works. I think from my perspective, from an average consumer level, it depends. I used to be pretty hardcore Android. You're wrong if you don't. But as I've gotten older, it's more like it depends on what you're looking for. Ease of use and stability, sure. Maybe iOS wins that battle for the majority, but I think it depends on who you are and what you're looking for. And for most people, if you're not getting what you're looking for in one place. That's why we have multiple markets, right? If you choose iOS, if that suits your lifestyle, great. If you choose Android, well, great. Like, I like the preference because I like the customization. And I don't know. For me, it's like, pick a side, you know? What are you willing to deal with? Because I've heard horror stories of, you know, iOS users as well being like, I'm really agitated that this is closed and these specific features don't work, or I'm not getting what I want out of it. So like, it just depends, right? For me, I'm an either or guy. Find what suits you best.
Yeah, makes total sense. Jordan, what about you, sir? Any closing thoughts?
I guess I'm leaning more towards I am very excited to see, I'm going to sit on a fence. You know what I mean? I can see the appeal for, you know, both of the players here for iPhone, or iOS more rather, versus Android. I can see the appeal for both. And in certain aspects, in certain cases, I'm drawn to both. And, for me, I'm very interested to see as Android matures, like what it can do, you know what I mean, as we kind of go forward, and you know what there's a lot of cool stuff. You know, Google's doing a lot of cool stuff, and you know, Apple's also doing a lot of cool stuff. They've matured in the same way, or different ways, you know what I mean. But they're trending. Both players are kind of trending in the same direction, which is just a better experience for their consumers, whatever that means. So yeah, man, I'm just excited to kind of see what how the market, if you will, changes and shifts. It'd be really interesting to see, like, this late into the game. It'd be really interesting to see like a brand new OS kind of drop, and how does that change things, or a new, you know, manufacturer or whatever. I don't know. I'm looking forward to the future on both sides. Very side agnostic.
Jordy, what's Elon Musk OS?
Right. Yeah, he does. We do need more innovation. we do need more innovation, because I will say, so like my closing thought on this would be that, you know, I do feel like Apple kind of defined the space early on, like many years ago when smartphones came out, obviously, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think in terms of innovating and bringing features to that industry, it's definitely been more on the Android side, because just at its core, it's been more of like a tinker friendly side of things. And I think all the way from that initial launch until now, it's been a lot of Apple seeing what the competitor is doing and taking that idea and putting their own spin on it, and in some cases making it better and making it part of the core functionality of their system. And then they just iterate on it generation over generation. So I personally, I don't feel like, I'm not one of the Apple fanboys that's going to sit here and tell you that they innovate constantly, because I don't feel like Apple's super innovative at all. I feel like they just take an idea and they make it a little bit better, and what they put their own. The what?
The dynamic island. It was so amazing, dude. That was you know, pinnacle innovation there, brother.
Like I said, I am not a fanboy at all. I am. I'm very, very curious to see what our listeners think. So, obviously, we say this every time. I really, you know, guys and gals, jump on Discord. Tell us how you feel about it. Tell us what your preference is. Ask us any questions about either platform. We have a lot of experience with both. I mean, yes, it really does come down to personal preference. One of the things I can come away saying is that, like, if you kind of have a case of FOMO, and that's fear of missing out, I'll go ahead and define that acronym for anybody that doesn't know. That's more of a cultural thing, I guess. But anyways,
you old people,
you old folks out there. But yeah, I mean, if you're not really, if you're not bought into one side, if you're not completely like tied to one side, the next time it's time to upgrade, jump the fence, go try out the other platform, see what you think. It's going to get your core stuff done. So if you're really curious about the experience, try both. Have a friend, use a friend's device for a little bit. Try it out. I mean, I don't know how else to really tell you about the experience outside of you just trying it as a daily driver and really kind of getting a firsthand experience of it.
I do want to say on that note that the transfer process from Android to iPhone was unreasonably easy. I had no idea. If I had known it was going to be that easy, I may have tried it out sooner. It took basically no effort. The one thing you really got to watch out for is your two-factor authentications on your 2FA apps. And I think Steam's the only one that almost got me. But overall, I mean, it was one of the most low effort experiences I've ever experienced in transferring hardware. And I've, transferred a lot of hardware. It might have been more low effort than some of my transfers phone to phone that I've done, going from like the S3 to the original Pixel or whatever it is. Maybe it was S3 to S6 to Pixel or something like that. Some of those early transfers were ugly and really painful, and this was seamless. So if you're curious, just go try it out. It's not so bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that pretty much wraps it up, unless, Sean, you got something?
I was going to say, we had brought up LG pulling out of the market, and I just did a quick Google. They lost $4.5 billion in 6 years.
Yeah.
Ouch.
So, I thought they had a bad run of it.
Ouch. Baby.
Yeah, I just thought it was
Ouch.
funny. Thought I'd put a little funny tidbit at the end. So
A little funny tidbit at the end. Yeah, it's a good job, LG. You failed in the phone market. That's funny.
yeah. All right.
Great job, guys.
Whoops.
Well, cool. As always, appreciate everybody tuning in. We hope you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Jump into the forums, jump into the Discord, especially have a chat with us. And until next time, take care.
Peace.
See you. Bye.